up, YouTube? This is Just My Opinion, and today I will be reviewing MGMT's debut album, Oracular Spectacular. MGMT is a psych rock and indie rock group out of Connecticut. The founding two members were Andrew and Ben, who actually went to college together, and in college experimented with both electronica and noise rock, and which led them to releasing their 2005 EP, Time to Pretend, which a couple of those songs made it onto the album, which I'll get into. And with the success of this EP, they actually were able to tour with the group of Montreal. In 2006, they wound up signing to Columbia Records, and with this album being released in 2008, they immediately gained success and gained notoriety as a future band on the rise in the industry, a band and group to look out for. And it was mainly because of the success of 3 singles off of this album, the first of which, Time to Pretend, is the lead-off track on the album, perhaps their most well-known and most popular song, easily a standout track of mine. This is an indie-tronic anthem right here. Has very heavy synths, just an unmistakably beautiful lead synth melody, and it's a great story of the band members kind of leaving their normal boring lives and wanting more, journeying into superstardom. And the lead singer does a great job as far as capturing that boyish charm. It's catchy, it's captivating. It's definitely a timeless song. Then from there we get Weekend Wars, which is a little bit more of a traditional indie rock song. The lead singer in this kind of gives almost, with his voice, gives off kind of like a folk type feel. It starts off kind of slow and mellow with the nice guitar leads being very mellow. Then it kind of slowly builds up. Has some nice electronic-y swirling elements. There's some subtle synths. There's some organs that get thrown in there. It's kind of going all over the place sonically, but yet it still meshes well together. We then get The Youth, which is another standout track of mine. It's another very psychedelic song. Has some really nice, mellow, low-key drums in there, which kind of let the rest of the instrumentation really take light. They're doing a lot of interesting stuff on this song. Great uses of distortion and reverb, both in the instrumentation and in the vocals as well, that give off that kind of psychedelic vibe. Great guitar progressions with some nice ethereal effects, some nice synthesizers thrown in there occasionally as well. The song is all about love, change, rebellion, just stereotypical hippie shit. Then we get Electric Feel, which is another standout track of mine. This is the second of the 3 singles that became really, really popular from this album. This is another indie pop classic right here. Has some great guitar licks, a really, really amazing bass line in there, coupled in with the nice heavy drums on the verses of the song. Has some really great flutes, actually, some really nice flutes, and there's even a really beautiful flute solo on like the bridge of the song. Overall has a very nice up-tempo dancey vibe, has kind of like a 70s style disco and soul vibe, but just a little bit more psychedelic. The song is all about lust, and the intoxicating vocals provided by the lead singer match really, really well with the just overall intoxicating vibe and aesthetic of the song. We then get Kids, which is the 3rd single, and when I tell you this is my favorite song, not just from this album, but of all time, I shit you not, this is my favorite song of all time. Absolutely love this song. I love the EP version of this song a little bit better though than the version that made it to the album, as the album version, it's a little bit heavier and rawer, as the EP version was a little bit more blissful. But still, even though it's mixed and mastered a little bit differently on this album, still carries over the same feel, same vibe. It just, the lead synth melody is just so undeniably great. It's just something that will just stay stuck in your head, very blissful, and just carries over a very happy, great vibe to it. Nice, heavy kicks and snares, nice driving kicks and snares, definitely more up-tempo, nice acidy synths thrown in there, and the way that the production all meshes together is really beautiful. And I love the message behind the song too, all about kind of innocence being lost and the fear of growing up. taking life slow and just always trying to create lifelong memories. It's catchy, it's fun, it's nostalgic. It's, to me, it's the standard of what an indie pop song should be. It's just going to be one of those timeless songs that I will always return back to. Then on the 6th song on the album, we get Fourth Dimensional Transition, which it really truly is a transition stylistic wise, sound wise. This whole second half of the album has a different feel than the first half. This kind of starts the mark of what we also will hear from the band going forward in their musical careers, and what we hear a lot of on their follow-up album, Congratulations, which came out in 2010. This song has more of a surf rock type vibe to it, just the overall sound and the way it's set up, with the organs, the fast-paced drums, kind of sounding almost tribal-like. Guitar leads just kind of remind me of like a rippling wave almost. It's just a completely different feel stylistically than the first half of the album. And this vibe carries over into the next song, Pieces of What, which is another standout track of mine. Has a very folk acoustic ballad type of vibe to it. The singer on the vocals and his vocal performance has kind of like this twang to it. That reminds me very much of folk music. I don't know why, it gives me like a Bob Dylan-esque type vibe to it. Then we get Of Moons, Birds, and Monsters, which sonically and structurally, song-wise, is kind of all over the place. First half of the song has some great vocal melodies in there, and has a great guitar solo as well in there in the first half of the track. But then the second half, it kind of slows down and goes more into almost like a jam band type aesthetic. There's these very swirling electronic-y sounds thrown in there with the drums. You get little subtle solos here and there. Great guitar progressions in there as well. Kind of the way that it all kind of came together sounded very jam bandish. But then after this song, I feel like we could have ended the album off with that song, as the last two songs on the album to me were the least interesting out of all the songs on this album. The first of which being the Handshake, which I think is probably my least favorite song. I didn't really think it really gave much to the album. It's one of the slowest paced songs on the album. Not a lot of real progressions going on as far as sonically wise. We get kind of the same lead piano, guitar, and organ progressions throughout. Songwriting wise and vocally, structurally, it kind of doesn't really have a set path that it goes on. It just is kind of all over the place. There's no structure to it, which is fine that there's really no structure to it. Not everything has to have a set structure, but I just feel like they do better when there is structure. And the album ends with Future Reflections, which to me is definitely a better song than the Handshake. It's a little bit more up-tempo. There's a little bit more going on in it. There is some nice progressions and sounds throughout. It sounds prettier, more blissful. But again, I still think that overall the album could have just... This song really didn't add much to the album. So in conclusion, it is a very psychedelic album in nature, but it did kind of feel divided as an album. Although it is clear that they had no problem as far as experimenting, and I think that they did quite a bit of sounds and styles well on this album. I think it still kind of hindered the overall album, as really on this album they didn't really mark a true identity for themselves. First half of the album definitely had more of a synth pop and indie-tronic type of feel. The second half of the album had more of a traditional psych rock type of feel, experimenting with sounds and styles of the 60s and 70s. Me personally, I kind of gravitated more towards the synth pop stuff more, to be completely honest with you. I think it was done better. It was more structured. I think the songs in general were more interesting. I think when they kind of would ramble on some of these other songs towards the second half, to me, although I think they did certain stuff very well, and production-wise throughout the whole album sounded great, I think just structurally wise, they did better when there was a clear verse, chorus, verse type structure as opposed to just kind of rambling. But I can say that the singles on this album are some of the most timeless songs I think that I'll ever hear from my generation of music. So overall, I give this album a 6.5 out of 10. Remember, this is just my opinion, and thank you for watching YouTube.